Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going on, well, what might just be the ultimate journey. We're doing a global tour, spanning millennia, of humanity's final destination, heaven, the highest place.
It's an idea you find, literally everywhere. It cuts across every border. But what's really striking when you pull all the sources together isn't how similar they are. It's the astonishing variety.
Right.
Every culture has asked the same basic question, what's up there beyond the sky? But they come to these conclusions that are just, well, fundamentally at odds with each other, especially on structure, on who gets in, and I think most importantly on what its purpose even is.
And that's our mission today. We're taking your sources and doing a deep, rigorous global tour. We're going to trace this whole concept from its linguistic roots, where it was basically a big, solid rock in the sky, all the way to modern ideas of it being an abstract state of mind, or maybe even something hardwired into our brains.
We should probably start with a basic foundation, working definition. Across almost every tradition, heaven is, at its core, a location. It might be cosmological, it might be supernatural, but it's a place where gods, angels, spirits, ancestors, where they live.
The highest place.
Always the highest place. A zone of perfection that stands in direct contrast to the underworld or hell.
But the second you move past that, you immediately hit this massive philosophical fork in the road, and it sort of splits the entire world map of belief.
It really does. It's this question of access and permanence. Think about the Abrahamic faiths, Christianity, Islam, certain streams of Judaism. The framework is generally linear. You get one life, it's a single journey, and heaven is where good deeds are rewarded for. Well, for eternity. It's the end of the line, the final stop.
But if we shift our gaze east, especially to Indian religions like Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, the whole structure just kind of explodes.
It's not a straight line anymore, it's a circle.
The cycle.
Precisely. In that context, getting into heaven or Svarga or Devaloka is conditional. And this is the crucial part. It's temporary. It's a very nice reward for good karma, sure, but it is not the ultimate goal.
So it's more like a vacation than a final home?
It's a fantastic but temporary rest stop. Because unless you achieve moksha or nirvana, which is liberation from that cycle, you're still on the wheel of samsara, the endless road of rebirth. And that is just like a colossal philosophical difference.
Okay, let's unpack that right away, and let's start with the word itself. Before all the glory and the pearly gates, what did heaven even mean linguistically? Our modern English word heaven comes from the Old English haphon.
Right, and by about 1000 AD, heophon was definitely being used to talk about the Christian place of God, but its original meaning was much more basic, much more physical. It just meant sky or firmament.
And you see that in other related languages, right?
Absolutely. It's clear across the Germanic languages. In German, it's Himmel. In Dutch, it's Himmel. It all starts with the physical thing right above our heads.
Okay, but here's where the linguistic archaeology in the sources gets really wild. If you trace that root back past Proto-Germanic, you get to this even older Proto-Indo-European root, amo, and that means stone.
It's a shocker, isn't it? How does the sky become a stone? But then you look at the related words, the cognates. In Greek, you have akmun, which means anvil or pestle. It can even mean meteorite, something heavy, solid, something that strikes.
And in Sanskrit?
In Sanskrit, there's ashman, which means stone, rock, or even thunderbolt. So what this all suggests is that for our ancient ancestors, the sky wasn't this empty, airy space we imagine today. It was a solid physical vault, a dome of rock.
The sky is a barrier, a hard surface. It's not an open door. And that idea of the sky as a solid, structured dome, well, that leads us straight into the earliest cosmologies we have written down. The ancient Near East, Mesopotamia.
The Mesopotamians absolutely ran with this idea. For them, the sky wasn't just one dome. It was a series of layered domes, usually 3, sometimes 7, that covered a flat Earth. That was their entire universe.
And these domes weren't just metaphorical. They were made of stuff.
Oh, totally. They were, you could say, geological. Built by the gods out of specific precious stones. The sources are so detailed. The lowest dome, where the stars were, was made of jasper. The middle dome was made of something called Sagilmut stone. And that was home to a class of deities called the Igigi.
And the highest one.
The outermost dome was made of Luludanitu stone. And it was actually personified as the god An, the supreme god of the sky. This wasn't some cloudy spiritual realm. It was a structured geological reality built for the gods.
Which brings us to a really crucial point about these ancient cultures, divine exclusivity. Why couldn't a good, upstanding Mesopotamian go to heaven?
Simply because they couldn't. Heaven and earth were fundamentally separate realms by divine law. It was the home of the gods, period. It was never intended as a destination for humans, no matter how virtuous they were.
And the sources are very clear on this.
Crystal clear. You have that incredibly poignant quote from the Epic of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is talking about his friend Enkidu's death, and he says, "Who can go up to heaven, my friend? Only the gods dwell with Shamash forever."
Such a stark contrast to where we end up. So if heaven is off limits, what happened to mortals after they die?
You went to Kur, or Erkala. It was this dark, shadowy underworld deep beneath the earth. And here's the other huge difference. Everyone went there. It was a neutral destination.
So the idea of your actions in life determining your eternal fate, that just didn't exist for them.
Not in that framework, no. Kur was mandatory for all. It was dark, it was dusty, but it wasn't a place of punishment or reward. The dead just existed there as shadows. It tells you that their moral focus was entirely on this life, on their relationship with the gods here and now, not on some cosmic reward later on.
So the only access was through things like temples, right? The mooring rope between heaven and earth.
Exactly, a communication channel, a cosmic telephone line, but never ever a travel destination for your soul.
So if the ancient world saw heaven as this exclusive, locked-down divine realm, the shift we're about to talk about is maybe one of the biggest revolutions in the history of religion.
It's a seismic shift. The question is, when did heaven stop being the god's private headquarters and start becoming a potential reward for individual humans?
And the sources seem to point to Zoroastrianism as being a key cosmological bridge.
Yes, I think that's right. The prophet Zoroaster introduced a system that really codified the key ingredients for, you could say, a democratization of the afterlife. You get a clear, supreme, good God of Mazda, you get human free will, and you get a dualistic cosmos with a clear heaven, the house of song, and a clear hell, the house of lies.
Which introduces moral accountability into the cosmic equation.
It changes everything. It means your life has a purpose tied to virtue. And when you couple that with a final day of judgment where your soul is weighed, well, you can't have a one-size-fits-all afterlife anymore. Justice has to be served. And this package of ideas, one God, judgment, heaven, and hell, was hugely influential on the Abrahamic traditions that came later.
You can almost see this struggle playing out in real time in the Hebrew Bible. Like its neighbors, it depicts heaven Shamayim, which is always plural, by the way, hinting at those layers.
Good point.
It's shown as generally inaccessible. Prophets like Isaiah might get a vision, a temporary peek behind the curtain, but it's not presented as a destination for the dead.
No, the general expectation was still rooted in that older view. After you die, you rest in Sheol. It's a bit like Kur, a vague, shadowy place under the earth. For centuries, that was the assumed endpoint for human existence.
But there are these little hints of change, these ambiguous ascensions, like Enoch and Elijah.
They're fascinating cases. The text is so cagey about them. Genesis just says Enoch was taken by God. Elijah goes up in a fiery chariot. But the key thing is, the text doesn't say what happened next. Where did they go? What state are they in? They're presented as these monumental exceptions, not as a pathway for everyone else.
So the real tectonic shift for the entire Abrahamic worldview comes during the Second Temple period. We're talking roughly 500 BC to 70 AD. And this context is so important. This is when the Jewish people are living under intense pressure from one empire after another: Persian, Greek, Roman.
And this is when the old cosmology just starts to break down under that pressure. I mean, think about it. If you're being severely oppressed, the idea that a righteous martyr and a corrupt tyrant both end up in the same dusty, neutral place, it becomes morally and politically unbearable.
You need cosmic justice.
You desperately need cosmic justice. And so Jewish thought starts to absorb and adapt these powerful ideas from the cultures around them. The concept of an immortal soul, something that survives the body and wants to return to the divine, that's largely influenced by Greek philosophy.
And at the same time, you get the idea of the resurrection of the dead.
Right, which might have roots in Persian or Zoroastrian cosmology, though the exact timeline is debated by scholars. But what you get is this powerful new synthesis, the idea that the soul seeks to return to God, and that heaven is the eternal home for the righteous dead, just explodes in popularity. Heaven finally transitions from being God's administrative center to being humanity's ultimate reward.
And when we get to Christian conceptions, this evolution is basically complete. In the New Testament, you see talk of the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven.
Matthew usually says kingdom of heaven, while Mark and Luke say kingdom of God.
And that's not just a random choice, is it?
No, it's about audience and cultural sensitivity. For a first-century Jewish audience, which was Matthew's primary audience, you'd often avoid saying the name of God directly. So kingdom of heaven was a more respectful, culturally normal way to talk about God's rule. But they both meant the same thing.
And this kingdom was central to Jesus' teaching. But how would people back then have understood that? Were they thinking about floating on clouds after they died?
Not at all. Not at first. To a first-century Jew living under Roman occupation, the kingdom of God meant something very concrete. God's eventual apocalyptic takeover of the world. A direct, perfect rule established on earth.
That puts the Lord's Prayer in a whole new light. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. You're not asking to escape earth.
You're asking for heaven's blueprint to be stamped onto our physical reality. But of course, early Christian thought quickly evolved. Heaven became the immediate destination for the righteous soul upon death, with the resurrection of the body to follow at the end of time in a new heaven and new earth.
And even today, there's this move away from heaven as a physical place. You mentioned Pope John Paul II.
Yes, that's a perfect example of this modern abstraction. He explicitly described heaven not as a physical location in the clouds, but as a living, personal relationship with the Holy Trinity. It's not a place you go to, it's a state of being you enter into.
Which is a million miles away from those solid stone domes we started with.
A completely different universe of thought.
Okay, that abstraction is fascinating. But if you think the Abrahamic views are detailed, wait until we look east. As you said before, in the Indian religions, heaven isn't the finish line. It's more like a very fancy but temporary detour.
Before we jump fully into that, we do have to pause on Islam. It maintains that highly structured, layered architecture we saw in the ancient world, but it's all repurposed for this new reward system.
The seven heavens.
The seven samawat, yes. The Quran and Hadith mention them frequently. This cosmic structure ends at the Sidrat al-Muntaha, this huge, mysterious lote tree that marks the absolute boundary of created knowledge.
So it's the edge of the universe, in a way.
The edge of what can be known. And one interpretation is very cosmological. It suggests that all the stars and galaxies we can see, that's just the first heaven. There are 6 bigger worlds or dimensions beyond our comprehension.
But the actual afterlife destination for a righteous person isn't those spheres themselves, it's jhana.
Correct. Jhana, or the garden, is the paradise reward. And unlike that abstract state we just discussed, jhana is often described in the sources in very rich physical sensory terms. It's a place where your every wish is granted, where you wear silks and jewels, and you enjoy endless banquets. It's designed to be the fulfillment of every positive human desire, but without any of the negative emotions.
So your place in that hierarchy is determined by your deeds on earth.
Precisely. The better your deeds, the higher the level of jhana you attain. But it's also important to note there's diversity here, too. The sources mention the Ahmadiyya view, which is very different.
Oh, so?
They see most of this imagery, for both heaven and hell, as metaphorical. For them, the afterlife is a completely different kind of existence, a rarer entity. It's all about your spiritual transformation in this life. If you cultivate a taste for spiritual pleasures over carnal ones, then the afterlife is the fulfillment of that spiritual state. It shifts heaven from geography to psychology.
Okay, now let's make that full leap. The Indian religions, where the whole framework is cyclical. In Buddhism, you're basically told heaven is not where you want to end up.
That is the great philosophical divide. In Buddhism, you have many heavens called Devaloka, but, and this is the key, they're still part of samsara, still part of the cycle of suffering and rebirth.
So how do you get there?
You get reborn there because of a huge accumulation of good karma. But that karma is like a fuel tank. Your stay is glorious, it's incredibly long, but it is not eternal. Eventually, the good karma runs out, the tank is empty, and you die, only to be reborn somewhere else in the cycle.
So even the best case scenario is still a trap.
It's a golden cage, and that's why the ultimate goal for Buddhists is nirvana, which isn't a heaven, it's a transmundane state. It's blowing out the candle, breaking the cycle of suffering entirely.
The sources give these incredible numbers to emphasize just how temporary these heavens are, even with these mind-boggling lifespans.
It's a way of showing impermanence through sheer scale. You've got heavens where the lifespan is 9 million human years. You go up a level, it's 36 million years. Then you get to the to eat to heaven.
And the lifespan there is just astronomical.
In one tradition, it's 576 million years. Now, to a human, that's basically forever. But the entire philosophical point is that it's not. It's finite. Even these beings are still trapped by impermanence. The only ones who escape are those who have already achieved or are on the verge of nirvana.
And you see this exact same logic in Hinduism with Svargaloka.
Exactly the same principle. Attaining Svarga is a reward for good deeds and rituals, but it's not the final goal. It's a paradise of pleasure, but it's ephemeral. The karmic credit gets spent, and the soul has to return to the cycle.
Compared to the real goal, which is moksha.
Right. Moksha is liberation. It's not about entering a nicer realm. It's about achieving oneness with Brahman, the ultimate reality. It's a transcendent state that is completely distinct from any heavenly abode.
And Jainism uses this layered structure almost as a visual map of merit.
It does. In Jain cosmology, the universe is shaped like a standing human figure. The heavens, the Devaloka, are located at the chest, and they're all layered to provide different levels of reward based on your karmic balance sheet.
But again, just temporary stops on the journey.
Yes. The truly pure souls, the ones who have achieved liberation, the siddhas, they don't stay in the heavens. They ascend to the very, very top of the cosmic figure. The whole structure is a moral map, clearly separating the temporary rewards from the final, permanent state of perfection.
It's just incredible how every culture uses the architecture of its heaven to reflect what it values most. The structure of the sky always seems to validate the rules on the ground.
That's a great way to put it. And you see that beautifully in cosmologies outside of those major Eurasian systems. Take the Nahua people in Mesoamerica, the Aztecs.
Of 13 heavens.
Incredibly rigorous, 13 distinct levels. The highest one was Omeocan, the place of duality. This kind of complex bureaucratic structure speaks to a culture that valued meticulous organization and hierarchy.
And in Polynesian cultures, the heavens are often tied directly to the history of the world itself.
Exactly. In Maori cosmology, you have different traditions with anywhere from 2 to 14 levels. One common version has 10. And these levels have direct jobs related to human life. One is where the gods live, sure, but another, Hawara, is where the spirits of newborn children come from. There's this constant flow between the divine and the human.
We have that amazing source, that drawing by a Tumotuan chief from 1869.
Oh, that's a remarkable document. He drew 9 heavens, but each one was explicitly linked to a stage in the evolution of Earth. The lowest heaven represented the time when the sky was still low. Another represented the first murder. Another, the birth of the first coconut tree. Heaven wasn't just a destination. It was a co-creator and a mirror of their history.
So we've seen heaven as a rock, an eternal reward, a temporary retreat, a historical blueprint. But in more modern and philosophical views, the whole idea of place starts to dissolve.
The geography just vanishes. The Baha'i faith is a perfect example. It completely rejects a physical heaven. Instead, it's a spiritual condition defined by how close your soul is to God.
So your heaven is the state of your relationship with the divine.
That's it. The soul continues to progress and evolve, but its existence is beyond comprehension in the physical plane. It's not a place you go, it's a spiritual trajectory you continue on.
Sikhism takes that even further and basically brings the entire concept back down to earth.
They reject the otherworldly idea entirely. For Sikhs, heaven and hell are both experienced right here, in this world, as you reap the fruits of your karma. The ultimate heaven isn't a place you go to later. It's a state you achieve now. It is the company of the holy. That's it. The physical destination is irrelevant.
And then you get these really interesting systems like theosophy, which almost try to synthesize everything we've talked about.
It's a fascinating attempt. Theosophy suggests that every religion actually gets its own heaven in what they call the upper astral plane, a psychically constructed reality that perfectly matches what you believed in. So if you expected Jannah, you get Jannah.
But it's still temporary. It combines the Western reward with the Eastern cycle.
Exactly. After about 1,400 years, the soul is recalled by the lords of karma to be reborn. It's this grand unifying theory that tries to honor both traditions.
Which brings us to our final interpretation, the one that bypasses all the theology and goes straight for the wiring in our brains. Neuroscience.
This is a radical turn. Researchers like Lewis Williams and Pierce, they look at the fact that you find these tiered, layered heavens all over the world in cultures that had no contact with each other, from Mesopotamia to the Aztecs.
And they suggest it's not a coincidence.
They hypothesize that this structure isn't just a cultural invention. It might be linked to consistent neural activations, to things our brains consistently produce during altered states of consciousness, like deep trance or meditation. The idea is that the human brain, our basic hardware, is predisposed to generating this kind of tiered vertical map of the cosmos.
So the religious details, the software might be different. One calls it Devaloka, another calls it the 13 heavens. But the underlying structure, this vertical map, is universal because our brains are universal.
It suggests the drive to imagine a layered cosmos might be as fundamental to us as language. It's a structure that emerges from inside us, not just one that's imposed from the outside.
What an incredible tour of the ultimate human idea. We started with the word heaven, literally meaning stone, which gave us the solid, inaccessible domes of Mesopotamia.
Then we tracked that massive shift during the Second Temple period, where the desperate need for cosmic justice transformed heaven from God's private office into humanity's final reward, the democratization of the afterlife.
And then that huge philosophical leap east, contrasting the eternal linear reward of the Abrahamic faiths with the temporary cyclical heavens of Buddhism and Hinduism, where even 576 million years in paradise is still ultimately a trap.
And at the end of the day, the core insight for you, the listener, is that heaven is less about a single place and more about a culture holding up a mirror to its deepest values. Its structure, whether it's bureaucratic, spiritual, or a place of physical pleasure, always reinforces the ethical priorities of the people who imagined it.
The sheer variety shows us these fundamentally different philosophies of justice, of life itself. Are you striving for an eternal reward, or are you striving to be liberated from all states of being, even the most pleasant ones?
Which brings us back to that final provocative thought. Building on that neuroscience perspective, if this universal perception of a tiered, layered heaven is rooted in our shared brain chemistry, does that make the concept of heaven a fundamental, hardwired part of the human operating system, regardless of the theology we lay on top of it? Does the brain itself require a hierarchy for the infinite? Something for you to mull over on your own.